Hello, esteemed gentlemen. The most dangerous mind in the room isn't the loudest one. It's the one that's quietly watching everyone else while nobody realizes they're being understood. Here's a strange fact. Psychologists have long known that highly intelligent people often spend more time questioning their own thinking than defending it. The sharper the mind, the less impressed it is by easy answers. That's because real intelligence isn't about having an answer for everything. It's about seeing what everyone else completely misses. Now imagine combining that kind of mind with the psychology often associated with a Sigma personality. Not the internet stereotype, not the movie version, but someone whose brain constantly searches beneath the surface, spots hidden patterns and notices motives before words. A person who can walk into a room and leave with more information than the people who spent the whole night talking. Sounds impressive, doesn't it? Well, it's not always a superpower. Sometimes it's like having a browser with 3,000 tabs open and somehow every single one is playing music. Sleep becomes a negotiation. Small talk feels like reading the same page of a book over and over. And ordinary situations suddenly become puzzles that nobody else even realizes exist. So what really happens inside the mind of a Sigma male with an extremely high IQ? What makes him think differently, not just act differently? Why does he often see outcomes before they happen, remain strangely calm when others panic, and question things most people accept without a second thought? Today, we're stepping beyond the clichés and exploring the hidden psychology that few people ever notice. Some of these insights may completely change how you understand intelligence, human behavior, and perhaps even yourself. Stay until the end, because the final psychological trait is so subtle that most people mistake it for weakness, when it may actually be the greatest strength of all. Number 1. He sees every decision as a chain reaction, not a single choice. Most people judge a decision by what happens today. A Sigma male with an extremely high IQ is more interested in what that same decision will create tomorrow, next month, or even years from now. His mind naturally connects dots that others don't even notice exist. While someone else asks, "Will this work?" he's already asking, "What will this lead to if it keeps repeating?" This doesn't mean he can predict the future. It means he's unusually good at recognizing patterns. He understands that every choice carries hidden consequences, and those consequences often create new choices that are even more important than the first one. That's why he rarely rushes into opportunities simply because they look attractive. He knows that saying yes to one thing often means quietly saying no to 10 others. A new friendship, a business deal, a relationship, or even a simple habit isn't just one event to him. It's the beginning of a chain that can either build his future or slowly damage it. This way of thinking also explains why he appears patient, while everyone else seems to be in a hurry. He isn't moving slowly because he's unsure. He's taking the time to see what others are too distracted to notice. A decision made in 5 emotional minutes can create 5 years of unnecessary problems. People sometimes mistake this careful thinking for hesitation or overthinking. In reality, he's trying to avoid paying tomorrow's price for today's excitement. He understands that life is rarely changed by one dramatic moment. More often, it's shaped by small decisions that quietly multiply over time until they become impossible to ignore. That's why he doesn't just choose an action. He chooses the future that action is most likely to create. Number 2. He distrusts his own conclusions. More than other people, distrust them. One of the biggest misconceptions about highly intelligent people is that they believe they're always right. In reality, a Sigma male with an extremely high IQ often questions his own thinking more than anyone else ever could. He knows the human mind is brilliant at creating convincing stories, even when those stories are wrong. That awareness keeps his ego in check. When he reaches a conclusion, he doesn't immediately celebrate it. Instead, he starts looking for the cracks in his own reasoning. He asks himself uncomfortable questions. What if I missed something? What if I'm only seeing the evidence that supports my opinion? What if there's another explanation that's even stronger? Most people search for proof that they're right. He searches for proof that he's wrong. This habit protects him from one of the greatest traps of intelligence, becoming overconfident. He understands that being smart doesn't make someone immune to bias. In fact, highly intelligent people can sometimes be better at defending bad ideas because they can build stronger arguments around them. He refuses to let his intelligence become a lawyer for his ego. This is why he rarely argues just to win. If someone presents better evidence, he's willing to rethink his position without feeling embarrassed. To him, changing his mind isn't losing, it's improving. Every corrected mistake makes his thinking sharper than it was before. People often mistake this quiet self-questioning for uncertainty, but it's actually a sign of mental strength. He isn't afraid of being wrong because he knows the truth, doesn't care about pride. His goal isn't to protect his opinions. His goal is to get as close to reality as possible, even if it means proving himself wrong along the way. Number 3, he gets bored. When people repeat thoughts they've never examined. A Sigma male with an extremely high IQ isn't bored because people disagree with him. He's bored because too many people never stop to think for themselves. He notices how often opinions are borrowed instead of built. Someone hears an idea online, repeats it with confidence, and never asks whether it actually makes sense. To him, that's not thinking. It's copying. What captures his attention isn't whether someone is educated, wealthy, or popular. It's whether they arrived at their conclusions through honest thought or simply inherited them from the crowd. He respects people who ask difficult questions, admit when they don't know something, and are willing to challenge their own beliefs. Independent thinking is far more attractive to him than perfect agreement. This is one reason small talk rarely holds his attention for long. Conversations that stay on the surface feel predictable. The same opinions, the same complaints, the same recycled arguments. After a while, it all sounds like different voices reading from the same script. When someone finally shares an original idea, however, everything changes. He becomes fully engaged. It doesn't even matter if he disagrees. Fresh thinking excites him because it shows that a person has taken the time to examine the world instead of accepting it exactly as it was handed to them. People sometimes mistake his silence for arrogance, assuming he thinks he's smarter than everyone else. The truth is often much simpler. He's waiting for a conversation that goes beyond repeating headlines, trends, or popular opinions. He isn't searching for people who know everything. He's searching for people who are willing to think deeply, question honestly, and explore ideas without being controlled by what everyone else already believes. For him, a curious mind will always be more interesting than a confident echo. Number 4, his mind automatically separates emotion from information. Most people throw away information because they don't like the person delivering it. A Sigma male with an extremely high IQ does something very different. His first question isn't, "Do I like this person?" It's, "Is there any truth in what they're saying?" Those are two completely separate questions in his mind. Someone can criticize him with bad intentions and still accidentally point out a real weakness. Instead of becoming defensive, he quietly examines the criticism. If it's true, he keeps the lesson and ignores the attitude. If it's false, he discards it without carrying the emotional weight. He refuses to let someone's tone determine whether the message has value. The same applies to praise. While many people enjoy compliments without thinking twice, he doesn't immediately trust them. He knows praise can be genuine, but it can also be used to gain favor, lower someone's guard, or influence a decision. Rather than getting carried away, he looks beyond the words and asks why they were spoken in the first place. This doesn't mean he's cold or emotionless. He feels emotions just like everyone else. The difference is that he doesn't allow them to become the judge of every situation. He creates a small mental gap between what he feels and what he believes. That gap gives him room to think clearly before reacting. Because of this, he is difficult to manipulate through flattery, insults, guilt, or emotional pressure. He understands that emotions can be powerful, but they are not always reliable guides to reality. Facts remain facts, even when they arrive wrapped in anger or praise. That habit gives him an unusual advantage. While others are busy reacting to how something was said, he is already uncovering what was actually meant. In a world where emotions often drown out reason, that ability quietly sets him apart. Number 5. He notices psychological debt that nobody else sees. A Sigma male with an extremely high IQ understands that not every debt is measured in money. Some of the strongest obligations people carry are completely invisible. They exist in favors, compliments, attention, loyalty, and kindness. While most people see these as harmless exchanges, he notices how easily they can become silent contracts. He knows that a favor is sometimes more than a favor. It can create an unspoken expectation that says, "Now you owe me." A compliment may sound genuine, but it can also be a way of lowering someone's guard before asking for something. Even constant attention can quietly turn into pressure, making a person feel guilty for saying no. Because he recognizes these patterns, he is careful about both giving and receiving. He doesn't like making people feel indebted to him, and he doesn't enjoy carrying invisible obligations himself. If someone helps him sincerely, he is grateful. But if the help comes with strings attached, he would rather solve the problem on his own than spend months paying back an emotional bill he never agreed to. This awareness also changes the way he observes relationships. He pays attention to who keeps score, who reminds others of everything they've done, who uses past sacrifices as leverage, who turns generosity into control. These are warning signs that many people overlook until it's too late. People often think he's overly cautious or unnecessarily independent. They don't realize he's protecting something far more valuable than convenience, his freedom to make decisions without feeling emotionally cornered. That's why he rarely mistakes generosity for kindness or obligation for loyalty. He understands that genuine relationships don't rely on hidden invoices waiting to be collected. Real respect is freely given, not quietly traded. And the smartest people know that the most expensive debts are often the ones nobody ever says out loud. Number 6. He doesn't judge intelligence by vocabulary. A Sigma male with an extremely high IQ is rarely impressed by people who fill every conversation with complicated words. He has learned that sounding intelligent and thinking intelligently are two very different things. Some people use big words to communicate clearly. Others use them to hide weak ideas. He knows the difference almost immediately. What earns his respect isn't an impressive vocabulary, but clear thinking. He pays attention to how someone solves problems, explains difficult ideas, and responds when they're challenged. A person who can make something complicated easy to understand often displays a deeper level of intelligence than someone who makes something simple sound confusing. This is why he enjoys conversations with people who speak honestly rather than dramatically. They don't feel the need to prove how smart they are. They ask thoughtful questions, admit when they don't know something, and focus on discovering the truth instead of protecting their image. That kind of humility stands out to him far more than polished speeches. He also notices that people who truly understand a subject rarely need to overwhelm others with jargon. They can explain it in everyday language because they've mastered it. The ones who constantly hide behind technical terms are sometimes still trying to convince themselves they understand it. Because of this, he never underestimates someone based on how they speak. The quiet mechanic, the elderly neighbor, the cleaner, or the shop owner may carry years of practical wisdom that no textbook can teach. He listens before he judges. In a world where many people mistake impressive language for impressive thinking, he looks beneath the words. He knows that intelligence isn't measured by the size of a person's vocabulary. It's measured by the quality of their thinking, the clarity of their reasoning, and their ability to turn knowledge into understanding. That is the kind of intelligence that leaves a lasting impression. Number 7, he can predict the ending because he studies patterns, not personalities. One of the most overlooked signs of a Sigma male with an extremely high IQ is that he pays less attention to who people are and far more attention to what they repeatedly do. He understands that personalities can be confusing, but patterns rarely lie. A person may change their words, their appearance, or even their circle of friends, yet their habits often reveal where they're truly headed. This is why he isn't easily surprised by people's decisions. While others say, "I never saw that coming," he quietly remembers the small warning signs that everyone ignored. He noticed the excuses that kept getting repeated, the promises that were never followed by action, and the tiny behaviors that slowly became a routine. To him, those weren't random moments. They were clues. He knows that the future usually doesn't arrive out of nowhere. It grows from repeated actions. Someone who constantly avoids responsibility will eventually face the consequences. Someone who consistently keeps learning will almost always improve. The ending often begins long before anyone notices the story has started. This doesn't mean he believes people can never change. He simply knows that real change always begins with changing patterns, not making dramatic announcements. Words can change overnight. Habits take time. That's why he watches consistency instead of speeches. People sometimes assume he has some mysterious ability to read minds. The truth is much simpler. He watches what repeats. Human behavior follows rhythms that most people overlook because they're distracted by emotions or first impressions. That's why his predictions often seem surprisingly accurate. He isn't guessing. He's recognizing the direction a pattern is already moving. To him, the ending isn't magic or luck. More often than not, it's simply the natural destination of choices made over and over again. Number 8. Silence becomes his research laboratory. Silence means different things to different people. For some, it's awkward. For others, it's peaceful. But for a Sigma male with an extremely high IQ, silence is where some of his best thinking happens. It isn't an empty space that needs to be filled with noise. It's a place where his mind begins connecting ideas that the outside world constantly interrupts. When everything around him becomes quiet, his brain doesn't switch off. It becomes more focused. He replays conversations, examines decisions, tests different possibilities, and asks questions that never crossed his mind while everyone else was talking. Silence gives him the freedom to think, without pressure, without interruptions, and without the need to respond immediately. This is one reason he doesn't feel the urge to speak just because everyone else is speaking. He understands that talking fills the air, but thinking fills the mind. Many of his strongest conclusions are formed long after the conversation has ended, when he finally has the space to examine everything that was said. He also values silence because it exposes things noise often hides. When people aren't constantly explaining themselves, their actions become easier to notice. A pause, a hesitation, a change in behavior, or an uncomfortable silence can reveal more than 100 carefully chosen words. While others rush to break the silence, he quietly learns from it. People sometimes mistake his quiet nature for a lack of confidence or social skill. They assume he has nothing to say, when the opposite is often true. He's simply more interested in producing one thoughtful sentence than 100 empty ones. To him, silence is never wasted time. It's where scattered thoughts become clear, where confusion turns into understanding, and where ideas are refined before they ever leave his mouth. In a world addicted to constant noise, silence becomes the one place where his mind does its deepest work. Number 9. He rarely hates anyone because he understands their programming. A Sigma male with an extremely high IQ often sees people through a different lens. Instead of asking, "Why is this person so difficult?" he asks, "What shaped this behavior?" He understands that every person is influenced by years of experiences, habits, fears, successes and failures. Long before someone speaks, life has already been teaching them how to think and react. This doesn't mean he excuses bad behavior or accepts being mistreated. He simply refuses to waste energy hating people, when understanding them provides far more useful answers. Anger may explain how he feels, but understanding explains why things happened. To him, the second is far more valuable. He notices that many people are repeating patterns they never consciously chose. Some grew up believing trust is dangerous, so they push others away before getting hurt. Others chase constant approval because they were only praised when they achieved something. Some lie because honesty once came with painful consequences. These behaviors aren't random. They're learned responses that have been repeated so often they feel automatic. Recognizing this changes the way he deals with people. Instead of reacting emotionally to every insult or betrayal, he looks beneath the surface. He understands that many battles people fight have nothing to do with him. Often they're responding to old wounds, old fears, or old beliefs they have never questioned. This perspective gives him an unusual sense of calm. He chooses distance over revenge, boundaries over bitterness, and wisdom over endless resentment. He knows that carrying hatred only gives another person free space in his own mind. The more he understands human behavior, the less interested he becomes in judging people at face value. He doesn't see everyone as good or bad. He sees them as individuals shaped by countless invisible influences. That understanding doesn't make him weak. It makes him far harder to provoke and much harder to control. Number 10. He pays attention to contradictions more than compliments. A Sigma male with an extremely high IQ knows that words are easy to control, but consistency is not. Anyone can practice a speech, prepare the perfect excuse, or say exactly what others want to hear. What is much harder to fake is the gap between what someone says and what they repeatedly do. That gap is where he finds the truth. When someone promises loyalty, but disappears the moment life becomes inconvenient, he notices. When a person claims honesty, yet constantly twists small details, he notices. When someone speaks about humility, but always needs to be the center of attention, he notices that too. These contradictions speak louder to him than any compliment ever could. This is why he rarely gets carried away by praise. Compliments can be sincere, but they can also be used to gain trust, soften resistance, or create influence. Instead of asking whether the words sound good, he asks whether the person's actions support them. If they don't match, the compliments quickly lose their value. He has learned that people reveal themselves in small inconsistencies long before they reveal themselves in major mistakes. Tiny broken promises, shifting standards, convenient excuses and changing stories often predict bigger problems waiting ahead. Most people dismiss these moments because they seem too small to matter. He understands that patterns always begin small. Because of this, he doesn't build trust based on charm or confidence. He builds it on consistency. He would rather deal with someone who speaks plainly but lives honestly than someone who says all the right things while quietly doing the opposite. To him, contradictions are like cracks in a wall. They may seem harmless at first, but they reveal what is happening beneath the surface. While others are distracted by polished words, he quietly follows the evidence. And more often than not, the evidence tells the real story. Number 11. He can spot artificial urgency instantly. A Sigma male with an extremely high IQ has learned that not every emergency is real. Some people create pressure because they know rushed minds make poor decisions. The faster someone is pushed to act, the less time they have to think. That simple truth makes him unusually cautious whenever someone says, "You have to decide right now." He pays close attention to situations where urgency appears out of nowhere. A salesperson insists the offer will disappear in an hour. A friend demands immediate loyalty without giving the full story. A manipulative person wants an answer before questions can be asked. These moments immediately raise a red flag. Instead of speeding up, he slows down. His first instinct isn't to panic. It's to ask why someone is trying so hard to remove his time to think. He knows that confidence welcomes questions, while manipulation fears them. If a decision is truly good, it should survive careful thinking. If it falls apart the moment someone asks for more time, it probably wasn't a good decision in the first place. This mindset protects him from countless mistakes. He doesn't buy into fear just because it's delivered with confidence. He understands that emotions can make ordinary situations feel urgent, even when they aren't. That's why he separates the clock from the facts. Just because someone is in a hurry doesn't mean he has to be. People sometimes mistake his calm response for indifference or hesitation. They wonder why he isn't reacting with the same urgency as everyone else. What they don't realize is that he has seen this pattern before. Many costly mistakes begin with the words, "Don't think too much." He knows that genuine opportunities usually remain valuable after a few minutes of careful thought. Fake urgency, however, depends on panic. The moment panic disappears, so does its power. That's why he guards his time to think as carefully as he guards his freedom to choose. Number 12. He understands that intelligence doesn't protect anyone from self-deception. A Sigma male with an extremely high IQ knows one uncomfortable truth that many people never accept. The mind is fully capable of fooling itself. Intelligence doesn't automatically protect someone from bad decisions. In fact, it can sometimes make self-deception even more dangerous. A sharp mind can create brilliant excuses for actions that make no sense, turning pride into something that sounds perfectly logical. That's why he is more suspicious of his own certainty than most people are. The moment he starts believing he can't be wrong, he sees that as a warning sign rather than a victory. He understands that confidence can quietly become arrogance, and arrogance has a way of closing the door to new ideas. He has seen intelligent people destroy relationships because they were convinced they were always right. He has watched successful people ignore obvious warning signs because admitting a mistake would hurt their pride. He knows that being smart doesn't erase human weaknesses. It simply gives those weaknesses better arguments to hide behind. For this reason, he regularly challenges his own thinking. He asks difficult questions that most people avoid. What if I'm only seeing what I want to see? What evidence would prove me wrong? Am I protecting the truth or just protecting my ego? Those questions keep his mind flexible instead of trapped. This habit makes him a lifelong student rather than someone who believes he has already figured everything out. He understands that learning doesn't stop when you become intelligent. It stops when you become convinced there's nothing left to learn. As you've seen, the psychology of a Sigma male with an extremely high IQ isn't about acting mysterious, proving superiority, or believing you're smarter than everyone else. It's about thinking differently. It's about questioning your own assumptions, recognizing patterns others overlook, staying calm when emotions are running high, and refusing to let your mind become trapped by pride, pressure, or popular opinion. True intelligence isn't measured by how much you know. It's measured by how willing you are to keep learning, how quickly you can admit when you're wrong, and how clearly you can see reality without letting your ego distort it. The strongest minds aren't the ones that always have the answers. They're the ones that never stop asking better questions. If there's one lesson to take away from this video, let it be this. Your greatest advantage will never be your IQ alone. It will always be your ability to think independently, remain curious, and keep your mind open even when the world encourages you to do the opposite. If you enjoyed this video and found these insights valuable, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into psychology, human behavior, and the hidden patterns that shape our lives. If one of these psychological traits stood out to you the most, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the conversation. Until next time, keep thinking deeply, stay curious, and never stop sharpening the one tool that shapes every part of your life, your mind.